So, your boy went to his local Esquire movie theater and watched himself a Halloween end of October double feature. 15 bucks to see two late 80s gore splatter fests on the big screen. First up was Pieces from 1982, slasher film I've been very much aware of, never seen it before. But as a horror fan, as an '80s slasher fan, it's one of the more prolific films, and admittedly, kind of disappointed that I hadn't seen it up until this point. And I think it happily fits snug into the Maniacs of the world, the movies that they don't really have any substance at all whatsoever. Although they're very entertaining because they're either intentionally or unintentionally funny due to the terrible acting, which in the case of Pieces, I think it's actually aided by the fact that it is a foreign film that is dubbed, so it makes the acting even more hilarious, and the deliveries and stuff made me laugh out loud quite a bit. But the gore itself is great. The kills are pretty goddamn good as well. The killer is kind of underwhelming. He's not super distinct. He doesn't have a ton of standout qualities, but it's a quality slasher film. That if you were compiling a list of some of the best '80s B slashers, it's definitely on that list. I think it's the epitome of the '80s B slasher, and so for that reason, I do have to tip my cap to it. And I enjoyed it for what it's worth, and I respect the hell out of the tagline, because it is what it is. It is not trying to be anything more than just a chainsaw wielding trench coat that potentially was the inspiration for I Know What You Did Last Summer. I give that one like a 3.5 out of 5. Yeah, it's enjoyable slasher goodness. Now, the other movie of the double feature that I saw, a movie I'd never even heard of, another foreign film, Faceless from 1988. And I didn't really know what to expect going in. Now, shout out to the Esquire, shout out to Torn Light, the record store right down the street, literally like 100 feet down the road from the Esquire Theater. He kind of gave a bit of almost a speech, because the record store was the one who provided the copies of the movies to show on the big screen or whatever. But he kind of gave a little spiel before Pieces, which played as the first of the two films, and then Faceless played after. But he had mentioned that Faceless kind of was a bit of a nod to the Eyes Without a Face film from 1960, which I believe is also a French film, which is a movie I'm aware of, knew kind of the general basis of, haven't actually seen it. And the plot of Faceless is very similar to that. Now, I have not seen Eyes Without a Face, so I can't necessarily say what is and isn't potentially stolen or just like straight up the exact same plot line in Faceless as was in Eyes Without a Face. But I will say, Faceless, I didn't really have much expectations. I was kind of expecting something along the lines of Pieces, in that vein where it's like over the top gore with not much substance, but just still enjoyable slasher film that will be entertaining. And what I ended up getting was a movie that had the sleaziness, had the promiscuity, the gratuitous nudity of Pieces, and so many other, Slumber Party Massacre, all of those '80s slashers, all the tits and the ass and sex and all that shit and the murder, all of that, had all of it. But it also had, in my opinion, a very fascinating and quite enjoyable plot. And I think a lot of that is because, unlike the movies that I've mentioned before, the typical B movie slashers, what makes a B movie a B movie? Well, part of it is dog shit dialogue, dog shit acting, and despite the fact that this movie is dubbed, which already puts the actors and actresses behind the eight ball because delivery is a very important part of a performance. And when it's dubbed, I mean, it's you already have an asterisk next to it. But despite this, the performances by the characters, in particular, the evil, like, I don't even know how to describe him. He's like a mad scientist, but he kind of reminds me of Hannibal Lecter in this way. This, like, I don't even know what word to describe him. But he plays Dr. Flamin and his assistant as well. She's my favorite character in the movie. She is one of the prettiest. She has one of the prettiest faces, and just in general, she's one of the prettiest women I've seen in any movie. Straight up, I mean, good God, she was absolutely beautiful. Like, wow. If I had a type, I guess that would be it. I think her name was Nathalie or something like that. She was great, and both of those characters, a lot of their lines were dubbed. But I also loved the Sam Morgan character, who I would assume had to take some homage from Psycho, because he is the detective that is hired by the father of the woman who is captured and wants keepsake for her face, for our evil doctor to replace his sister's face with, after it is basically, like, I don't know if there's like cyanide or what, but it's like acid, I guess, that gets thrown onto our Dr. Flamin's sister's face, and it just gives her this like really crazy burn look that I guess is supposed to progress throughout the movie, maybe, even though it says, at one point early on it says she's dealt with it for like a year, but it seems to get progressively worse throughout the movie, which is kind of interesting, because it's like it happens and a year passes, and then throughout that point on, I would say only like 2 or 3 weeks pass total, and it looks like the burns get progressively worse. Anyway, the burns are pretty cool, and just the effects in general in this movie are fantastic. But the concept of, itself, it borrows heavily from Eyes Without a Face, a film I haven't seen, but I do quite enjoy the plot, and it's heavily aided by the performances, because, like I said, Dr. Flamin is this mad scientist, seductive, narcissistic, evil bastard, not to mention the other doctor, Dr. Orloff, I believe, is his name, who is like this Nazi scientist who legitimately looks like Hannibal Lecter. He's also fucking like unsettling as shit. And the scenes in which they are legitimately performing like a facelift and or cutting off the face, they're like scalping, but with the actual face while the body is still alive. There's multiple scenes of it, and for a movie that came out in the 80s, the practical effects are unbelievable, because like, I don't want to say it made me queasy, but it was like, it was gross. Like, it was gross. Most horror from the 70s, 80s, and so on, the effects, while some of them are admirable, they still look dated. And honestly, when it comes to practical effects, it is as good as I've seen even today. Which, I mean, shit, I don't know what they're doing out in Europe, but I mean, not to say Tom Savini can't be put to shame, but I mean, it outdoes his work, which is saying a lot. And I think the biggest leg up I can give this movie is, whether it's the characters, whether it's just the kind of simultaneous, in my opinion, it kind of reminds me of Psycho, with the investigator kind of following perspectives between the madness going on in the hospital, as well as, you know, you have the guy overseas in America who's trying to find his daughter, and he sends, you know, Sam Loomis over to go look for him, and you kind of track his investigation. He kind of progressively gets closer and closer, and then he actually finds out, and it's pretty nice. Like it is a very well paced movie, but oh god, I don't want to say it all comes crashing down. I will say we finally do get the big ending where Sam comes face to face with Dr. Flamin and Nathalie and finds Barbara, you know, who he was trying to rescue. And they end up getting trapped inside of the little, like, fucked up chamber room at the basement of this fucking hospital, where they just keep women hostage in order to, you know, I guess he basically takes the hormones from their bodies in order to use for, like, his plastic surgeries and shit, which, like I said, is it the same as in Eyes Without a Face? I doubt it, since that movie was mainly 1960, but it's pretty fucked up. But I don't know, I feel like the movie ends a little too abruptly. There's not a full resolution, and I believe there is an alternate ending. And the director wanted to kind of not opt for the traditional ending that is wrapping up and tying all the loose ends. So I guess I can kind of respect it in that way. But the fan of the movie who really enjoyed the story, on top of, you know, all the shit that happens throughout, really wishes that, you know, we would see a successful rescuing, or, you know, seeing Dr. Flamand actually meet his demise, as opposed to, you know, we just see them locked in that room together and we assume that they probably are going to die of starvation or thirst, just because Dr. Flamand is one of those characters that you just like, my god, he's such an evil, conniving little fuck, in a good way. Like, it's such a fantastic performance, and again, with the dub, it's still good, which says a lot, because again, delivery is such a big part of movies, and just performances of actors and actresses, and the fact that he can kind of shine through it is pretty amazing. But I mean, whew, from a slasher perspective, like I said, I love the story quite a bit. You know, it's as good of a slasher plot when it comes to the characters and the pacing as it gets for me. Although the ending, like I said, it definitely left a bitter taste in my mouth. I'd be fucking lying if I told you the person I watched the movie with, I literally sat up and turned to them and I said, what? No, the movie cannot end there. Are you kidding me? Which, you know, as sad as that is pretty admirable to have me admit for a slasher film that I wanted it to continue, and I really, really wanted it to keep going. So I think it's a gift and a curse, and depending on how you look at it, again, I can respect the director for wanting to go for a more, you know, abstract ending that's not as traditional. But the slasher aspects, you know, the sex, and just in general, the women in this movie are absolutely gorgeous. God, there is not a ugly woman in this film, a not stunningly beautiful, like, strong 8 to light 9. There is nothing below that in this movie. And, you know, there is a somewhat, I say somewhat, there is not a very pleasant rape scene involving a fucking weird character, by the way. I don't even know what the fuck his name is, but he looks like he's got, like, no eyebrows, and he's got this wacky ass haircut, and, like, he ends up getting fucking impaled. Shout out to Sam Loomis, which is awesome. But yeah, that scene was like, oh god, like I can, you know, you respect the brutality. It's a horror film. You know, you watch somebody get murdered, you watch somebody get raped, everybody freaks out about the rape. Not as many people bat an eye about the murder. I get it, that's fair. You know, it is what it is. But the sex in this film, the nudity, um, you know, I'm not to be a pervert or anything like that, but again, I mean, a lot of the women in this movie are very attractive and very seductive, and you know, it is what it is. So it checks that box. But the kills itself are, you know, wow, the gore is nuts. Like I said, during the facial removings, like it genuinely had me kind of queasy. But not to mention, you know, like I said, our boy, I think, fuck, what is his name? Carl, maybe? I don't fucking know. Uh, he gets impaled. We also get a scene of a girl getting drilled, literally with a power drill through like some a closet type beat. Um, a random guy gets fucking stabbed with like some scissors whenever he like rips off the mask of the sister of Dr. Flamin, which is weird because they have like a love triangle, by the way. There's literally a scene of them making out despite them being related. That's fucking weird. But the kills, the gore are fantastic. I guess it is every bit as good of a movie like Pieces or Maniac or Slumber Party Massacre. Sorry, The Burning. All of those, you know, classic '80s slashers of this, you know, kind of time period who have really good kills. This, it also has great kills. Um, you know, there's not necessarily a killer per se. It's mainly Dr. Flamand. Natalie actually, or Naphtali, whatever the fuck her name is. It's foreign, so it's not Natalie. That's such an American way of saying that name. But anyway, she does more of the killing, honestly. She does most of the dirty work. And you know, she's a great character. As beautiful as she is, oh my god, one of the prettiest women I've ever seen in any film, any movie, ever. Like straight the fuck up. Oh my god, just absolutely drop dead gorgeous. She plays a very kind of almost a very seductive, sly, smooth, manipulative, kind of like calm and sensible, but also psychotic and crazy. I mean, like I said, this is the motherfucker who stabbed that dude in the gigolo that she picks up. She just like instantly fucking stabs him in the fucking back of his neck, like, and just like in his fucking brains, guts splatter out like crazy. So there's not really much of like an antagonist per se, like a traditional slasher. I don't really consider this a slasher. It's got the elements, I guess, but like there's not like nobody gets killed one by one, really like that. But yeah, all in all, it's a really fucking good movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's one of the better foreign films I've seen. The ending is really the only gripe I have with it. You know, yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of people, you know, compare it to just like a sleazier version of Eyes Without a Face. I haven't seen Eyes Without a Face yet, so maybe I should have watched that first. I don't know. I still enjoyed it. I would watch it again. I would legitimately, and I can't say this for movies. God, I keep saying, I can't say this for your traditional splatterfest B slashers, but I would actually recommend this movie to horror fans, film fans. Literally, the movie, the person I watched the movie with gave it a 4 out of 5, and they don't even really fuck with over the top horror like that. I mean, it's a good ass movie. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5. I can't give it a 5 because the ending kind of made me sad. I really wanted to see a more satisfying ending, and I just felt like I kind of got hung out to dry, I guess. But nonetheless, I still really, really enjoyed the movie, and I think as a whole, it's a great film that I highly recommend. It has something for everybody. Slasher fan or not, you're gonna like it.